Do you also love telling people that not enjoying a book and posting about it promotes toxicity in the community? In that case, great, because you arrived at the perfect video. That was sarcasm. That wasn't actually that funny. I'm sorry, I tried. Hi, hello, welcome back, or welcome if you're new to my channel. My name is Damla, and on here I talk about anything related to books. Today I want to chat. Not just me, I want you guys to chat as well. So if throughout the video I say something and you agree or you disagree or you have another point to add, feel free to comment that below. Just be respectful, but I feel like that's a given, right? Today I want to talk about negative reviews, and as the title probably also suggests, defend that sometimes being a hater is actually okay. This is a conversation that I feel like comes up every few months. My brain kind of puts that in the same category as that whole discourse of is listening to audiobooks considered reading? People talking about, oh, everyone's obsessed with spice, or people talking about how booktok is rotting our brains. In my head, that's always the same category because those topics come up every few months. But I guess this conversation especially interests me because it sometimes involves authors. In case you have no idea what I'm trying to say, or if you just need a refresher, I'm going to talk about a couple of instances that are related to negative reviews and or authors kind of talking about that as well. The first example I want to talk about is one where an author saw a very negative review and decided to dedicate a whole page in his next book to it. I know, Matt Shaw writes extreme horror and released a book, I forgot what it's called, but this person named Haley left a negative review of that book on Goodreads and then also mentioned it in one of her worst books of the year, I think it was 2022. And from what I gathered, the writer either came across the Goodreads review or the YouTube video, I'm not sure, maybe both. And then in his next book that he published after that, wrote a dedication about her. And he seemingly did this because I guess the specifics of why she didn't like the book struck a chord with him. Mind you, nowhere in any of her reviews or where she expressed her opinions was this directed at the author. She was just talking about books and if she enjoyed a book or not.
Hi, it's me again. I just wanted to say that I feel like I didn't really address this with enough nuance because the reviewer didn't directly talk to Matt Shaw, but she did talk about this general issue that she saw when it came to male authors in the extreme horror genre. Now that does not mean that Matt Shaw had the right to do what he did, but I sort of talked about it as if she wasn't talking about the author at all, which she kind of did, but again, that still does not really warrant the behavior that he exhibited.
A TikTok creator actually made a video about this, or I think multiple. Their username is Exclusive Palm Beach Living. I will link it below if you're curious about the situation because it's pretty extensive and this is just the very short version of it. Another event related to this happened around January this year, I think. I can't find the original video. I'm guessing the creator either deleted their video or maybe even privated/deleted their account, which that also brings me to any of the people that I'm mentioning in this video. Please do not go to them or harass them or anything. I feel like that's kind of a given. We're trying to have a conversation here. We're not trying to be mean to anyone, so please don't do that, just in case. Putting that out there. But anyway, so this person posted a TikTok that I actually remember going around where she was working on a book and she said that in her opinion, if you rate a book less than 3 stars, you're an asshole. And I think she cited reasons like effort that's put into a book and how much time it takes. Yeah, that caused a bit of a stir and there were a lot of people stitching it, so I can't find the original video anymore. I'm going to see if maybe there are some YouTube videos that have it included somewhere, but I, for the most part, could only find people stitching the video, and that's not the full video where she's really explaining what she means. There was also a situation with the author Molly X. Chang, who wrote To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods, which I think came out this year. It was her debut book. Prior to the book's release, some ARC reviewers came out and posted some negative Goodreads review. Just some background information because I think it's relevant. You may have heard of this author before, and that might be because there was a situation, I think last year, with this author named Kate Corain, who was review bombing a bunch of debut author books, and Molly X Chang was among those. I won't go into that situation because that's a whole roller coaster that I don't have time for. There's enough videos out there about it. So Molly X Chang viewed this current situation kind of as similar or the same. She thought she was being review bombed yet again by people. Another thing I think is important to mention is that in the negative reviews, people were throwing the word colonizer romance out a lot. I personally have not read the book, so I can't say much about the contents of it, but there is someone on YouTube who has made a video that I will link. It is Catherine N. Chang made a review of it. I will have it linked below as well. And so Molly X Chang viewed the situation, as I said, as people review bombing her again. And I'm going to be honest, I saw the situation unfold on Twitter. I know it's X, I still call it Twitter. And I at first also thought it was her being review bombed again because it had already happened before. So I was like, it wouldn't be too crazy of an idea, right? But it wasn't. These were actual people reviewing it or having read the book and criticizing it. Somewhere in this, the author was made under the impression that people were simply speaking badly about her instead of the book. I guess that also kind of was why she thought she was being review bombed again. This is a whole situation that I have not summed up very well, but just as a regular little refresher, I wanted to explain it very shortly. I'm gonna see if maybe there's a video about the situation itself, but yeah, this is like the shorts version of it. Now this is not really like a concrete example, but it's something I notice being on Booktube and Bookstagram. I'm not really on booktok a lot, but I can imagine it happens there as well. I sometimes see mutuals or creators that I follow being hesitant to post negative reviews, or straight up getting like negative comments when they post a review of the book that they didn't really like. And when they are hesitant about posting these negative reviews, they often cite like fear of coming across as like spreading toxicity or negative energy, I guess, in the community. One example I can think of the top of my head is Reads with Rachel. She posts a lot of book reviews on her channel, both positive and negative really, and some of her negative reviews get comments like, oh, you don't like anything that you're reading, why don't you pick up a book that you actually enjoy, etc, blah blah blah.
I got a comment today that I get frequently, and I think I've vented to you about how often I get these. It says, do you like any books? And a variation of this that I typically get is, do you like anything that you read?
When she does read books that she likes and she regularly recommends those as well. That is actually how I came across this one book that I'm looking to read. So the common denominator that I noticed, I could be wrong, but that I feel like is there, or pattern, is that both authors and sometimes even readers seem to commentate on reviews and how reviews should be done and written, and for authors will enter themselves in review spaces. Now I want to talk about my opinion on this. The short version of this is I think it's a little ridiculous. You can talk about books you like and dislike. I don't care. I don't see the issue with it. But if that was all I had to say, then this video would end right now. Sorry, that was a really lame joke that I put in the script. Anyway, now on to my actual thoughts in detail. I'm gonna stop trying to be funny, I promise. As I said, I don't have an issue with negative reviews of books. I think there are multiple arguments to be made for why it's actually fine to have them. I think transparency is a good reason. For example, I'm not saying that you're a dishonest creator if you only post 4 and 5 star reviews on your booktube channel or in your bookstagram or booktok or whatever, but I do think it adds a layer of honesty when you also talk about the books that you don't really enjoy. I feel like this also kind of ties into my next argument, which is that for me as a follower or a consumer of your content, it makes it easier for me to be oh, this is what this person likes, this is what this person doesn't like, and for me that's just something that is really interesting to see. I like knowing what kinds of books people like and dislike, and just a personal preference, I guess I prefer someone who talks about books that they liked but also disliked over someone who only talks about everything that they enjoyed. But that is a personal preference, really. So there probably are people out there that only like watching creators that enjoy or talk about 4 and 5 star rates, and that's also fine. Another reason why I think this is fine is that I think it makes discussions way more interesting. I like hearing what people have to say about books, especially books that I personally really enjoyed. It can help with seeing things that maybe you didn't notice because you liked the book, or viewing things differently and just understanding other people's point of view. it breaks my heart a little bit sometimes. Like, I remember, just a little example, I finished A Tempest of Tea a couple of days ago and I absolutely loved it, but I also know a lot of creators that were really disappointed by the book, and as much as that kind of breaks my heart a little, I also want to know why, and like, what was it about that? And maybe they have a point when they mention why they didn't like it. Like, I think it creates room for a nice discussion to have, which I really like in these spaces. I also feel like review spaces aren't really intended for authors to be in. Before being on Booktube, I decided to like dabble a little bit into AuthorTube. If you're curious about those videos, I have privated all of them, so you cannot find them anymore. And while it has been like a couple of years, I think it was like around 2020, there was always this like common piece of advice that was thrown around by almost anyone with a big platform, which was not to look at reviews, not to check Goodreads. Those spaces are not meant for authors. Those spaces are meant for readers to give their opinions on books and tell other readers why they should or should not read a book, or maybe what aspects of the book they liked and didn't like. I feel like if an author really inserts themselves and so like leaves a comment or is like really actively responding to reviews, especially even like reviews that aren't that positive, it can maybe taint the experience of the reader a little bit. And that includes readers who might really enjoy the book. If I know that the author of a book that I'm reading is looking at every single review, I don't know how comfortable I feel being fully transparent about why I did and didn't like those books, which sucks because, again, Goodreads is a place where like readers go and read reviews about a book to see if maybe they want to check it out, or maybe a book that they have read and want to see what other people think. And look, I totally get that feeling of having something that you have been working on for months, sometimes even years. You know, and it's been edited to like no end as well by you. It's been worked on by an editor. You have like proofreaders, beta readers, sensitivity readers, and then to be met with a negative review, that sucks. But again, these reviews are not intended to take into account how much work you've put into the book. That's not why they're there. And I know that sucks to hear, but that kind of like they're here to like judge the product. They're not really here to judge the process of how you got there and take that into account. And so I think that's also kind of why you should stay away from Goodreads, for why that is better for authors to do, because again, like, these reviews don't always take that into account. I personally try to, just because I wrote as a hobby from age 12 to 19, 20 or something. I wrote a lot of stories when I was younger, and it took me a lot of time, but that didn't mean they were good. And I think if everyone who read it like took into account how much time I took, they wouldn't be able to give me like good criticism. Also, this one's gonna sound weird, but sometimes negative reviews or like bad reviews of a book make me want to check it out. I know, it sounds weird, but for example, let's say someone wished a book contained more romance. My ears perk up a little because I like books that don't always contain romance. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should check that out. And let's be honest, negative reviews do get a little more traction than the positive ones, and that is something that I could like make a whole video about in and of itself, but that is something that is a thing, not just in bookish spaces. We'll not go too deeply into that, but I hope you get what I mean. I know I seem to defend readers a lot, and I may come across like I'm speaking negatively of and to authors, but of course that's not what I'm trying to do here. I will also talk about the other side of this that I think is important to mention, because while it's fine to be a little sarcastic and snarky in your review, I do think there are some lines that shouldn't be crossed. You know, it's fine to dislike something, but you don't need to be an asshole about it. I know that's a given, but for some people that's still really hard. One thing that for me personally is really important is to not tag authors in negative reviews. I already don't tag authors in reviews at all, but I think especially if you do it, just don't do it in like the lower rated ones. An author doesn't really need to know what you would have changed about a book or what you think should be different, because like it's their work that they have already put out into the world. They also don't need to see you rip a book to shreds if you hated it, because as I said before, these reviews are not intended for authors most of the time. Tagging it makes it more directed at the author rather than like your followers or, you know, people who are curious to see what like the book is like, or if they want to know what you think of it. Another common point of conversation concerns ARCs, which stands for Advanced Reader Copies. These are basically like early copies of books before they are released, and often they are posted on websites like NetGalley, which you can make an account on, and you can then like request to have early copies of a book. It is a general rule that I sometimes see going around, not always by the publisher themselves, but just like, I guess, a general rule, to withhold negative reviews for a little while, and at least until the book comes out. And with maybe a few exceptions, which to me are like genuinely problematic content of a book that should be addressed, I can agree with and understand this approach, especially considering the purpose of websites like NetGalley. I'm gonna cite NetGalley directly on their website, and I will link the page where it says this below. Our goal as NetGalley members is to craft reviews that are valuable to the publisher, author, and fellow book advocates. Be thoughtful and respectful about the work and the author. Aim for meaningful, not mean. Focus on the merits of the book rather than the author as an individual. NetGalley giving out ARCs isn't just so you can have like a silly little time with a book and then rip it to shreds if you hate it. Especially because in this case, the publisher and probably also author will see your review. Therefore, the review can and probably should be useful to the author in some way. But again, zooming out in the grand scheme of things, this is not a general rule. It pertains to specific kinds of reviews. NetGalley is also specific in selecting who gets to have a copy of a book that is coming out in the future. And I have gotten plenty of, like, not plenty of, but I've been rejected for a couple of books as well. So, you know, they do pick who gets to read their stuff. I will also say that from what I sometimes see with authors more recently is that review/reader spaces and author spaces seem to mix more often online. You know, sometimes authors even will review books, etc. So finding your way or like trying to figure out what the best approach is here as an author is hard. And I know staying out of review spaces is easier said than done, like I acknowledge that. But regardless of whether you also talk about books or not, like other books, staying away from negative reviews of your own books is very important, in my opinion. There's perhaps like one occasion where I think negative reviews are a little ridiculous. If you already know that you hate a genre, let's say romantasy, and you still seek out romantasy books and read them, and they contain like plot points or tropes that you absolutely hate, and you then put out a very negative review, you can still do it. You're allowed to be an ass. But I also don't see the point of it, and like I guess in some way that is a little dishonest, because I feel like that is different from like someone who genuinely enjoys the genre but doesn't like the specific book reviewing the book. I'm not into horror books. If I'm gonna read a horror book or even like a dark romance book, I'm gonna absolutely hate it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the book is bad. Maybe someone who is into horror or someone who is into dark romance absolutely loves it. You never know. You know, I like fantasy books. Someone who doesn't like fantasy is probably not gonna like a lot of the fantasy books that I read, and that is fine. But when you then review those books, that does need to be like noted somewhere, because I feel like that's different from actually enjoying the genre. I will say though, I don't see this happening that much, and maybe that is my little corner of the internet, because, you know, the internet is absolutely huge. So I wouldn't be surprised if this did happen a lot. I just haven't noticed it much. So I generally think that negative reviews are fine. Of course, we do not need to show an author that we consider DNFing their book 20 times because a certain trope was written awfully, in our opinion, because these are opinions after all. But let's just be respectful of each other as much as we can. And look, I think if you still don't want to see negative reviews at all, if you still disagree, that is fine. There are probably plenty of creators out there who will mostly talk about the books that they really enjoy. I see those a lot, especially on like bookstagram and stuff. So yeah, I think as long as we respect each other's opinion and respect authors, you know, I think the respect goes both ways. This shouldn't be as much of an issue, but, you know, still something that comes up every now and then. If you have any comments or anything you would like to add, maybe something I didn't mention, or maybe something I did mention and you want to talk about, feel free to comment. I don't want this to just be like a little think piece video and then have it like be thrown into the void without any comments or conversation happening. I actually really like it when people comment, so feel free to do that. I think that is everything I have to say for now. Maybe I will bring up something in the comments, who knows. If you like this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more, maybe consider subscribing to my channel. I also have socials. I have Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and Storygraph, which will all be linked below. And yeah, I hope you have a nice day. Please take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!